Good morning, Oregon. My name is Greg Graff, and I have the privilege, honor, and responsibility of being your VFW Post 10272 commander. As part of our ritual, before we get going, we're going to have our prayer given by Rhonda Volvogel, who is the Legion down in Brooklyn commander.
All right, good morning. Good morning. If you could remove your caps and bow your head, please. Almighty God, our fortress, our light and strength, today we ask your blessings for all our brave and loyal men and women, active, veteran, and retired, who have served in our military. We pray for their health, stability, and wholeness, and for special healing for those who are wounded in body, mind, and soul. We also honor those brave souls who gave us the ultimate sacrifice while serving our country. Father, also help us to remember the sacrifice of our veterans' families, the parents who exchanged last hugs before deployments, the spouses who took on extra burdens at home, and the children who waited patiently for their heroes to come back. Help us to remember that freedom is not free, and their service also fell on their families. We ask for your provision and protection over them as well. In your merciful name, amen.
You're so lucky you get to have me for a speaker today. First off, I would like to again reiterate there's a difference between today, Veterans Day, and Memorial Day. Memorial Day is for the service members who gave the ultimate sacrifice and died in the service of our village, our state, and our nation. Today is Veterans Day, which we honor the veterans who are still alive and still serve our village, our state, and our nation. In the late 1900s, early 1910s, there was a lot of volatile nationalistic, militaristic, imperialistic, and system of interlocking tensions in Europe, culminating in the assassination of the Archduke Franz Ferdinand, the heir to the Austro-Hungary Empire, and his wife, Sophie, Duchess of Hohenberg, by Bosnian Serb Gavrilo Princip on 28 June 1940. This led to the start of the First World War. During the war, Allied powers, most of them, were the UK, France, Italy, Russia, US, Serbia, Japan, Belgium, Romania, Greece, and Portugal. The Central Powers, Germany, Austria-Hungary, Ottoman Empire, which became Turkey, and Bulgaria. The numbers vary, but around 18 million people, both civilian and military, died in this first Great War. And just to add to the insult to injury, 1918 and 1920, the Spanish flu killed about 50 million people. Through the course of the war, things got worse, and Germany actually was considering giving up about a month before the armistice, cessation of conflict, did. But at 5 o'clock in the morning, on a private rail car in the forest of Campagnan, France, French Supreme Commander Frederick Foch, British Admiral Ross Wenges, and German politician Matthias Erzberger, and Count von Oberndorf, Major General von Winterfeld, and Captain Vanslo signed the armistice, cessation of hostilities, to take effect at 11 o'clock. The reason it took 6 hours, you had to get the communications out. The last American person to die, his name was Henry Gunther, at 10:59 in the morning. He was leading a platoon charging against a German machine gun nest, and he was shot. Other countries had similar experiences of casualties at the same time. In 1919, President Woodrow Wilson proclaimed 11 November as Armistice Day to be celebrated every year. On 13 May 1938, Congress made 11 November a legal holiday dedicated to world peace and honoring the veterans of World War I. Just as a side note, the armistice for World War II was also signed in a rail car in a private location. On 1 June 1954, just after World War II, Congress changed the name Armistice to Veterans Day. President Eisenhower issued the first Veterans Day proclamation. The date has been moved several times, but on 20 September 1975, President Ford returned it to 11 November. Conscription into the armed services ended on 30 June 1973, and for those who don't know what conscription is, you were required to sign up for selective service to join the military. The men and women you see before you today, voluntarily or involuntarily, wrote a blank check to the U.S. up to and including their life to protect the lives or the liberties and freedoms that our village and the state and the United States enjoy today. There are veterans on active duty in the National Guard or reserves. Some only served for a short time. Some made it a career. All should be thanked. If you have family members, distant relatives, make sure that you thank them today for their service, not only for what they did, but what they still do for our communities. The Legion does great things for Brooklyn, your VFW, great things here in the community. And to get us all out in the cold, I'll make it short. Sergeant at Arms, make it happen. We'll have our wreath laying by Cal Gilbertson. Now you can get it.
Color guard, rifleman, bench, hut, port, R. Rifleman, prepare to fire. Aim, fire. Aim, fire. Aim, fire. Port, R. Present, R. Port, R. Order, R.
Again, Oregon, thank you for coming out. Thank a veteran and enjoy your day.
Fall out.
I met a girl, her name was Tracy, and now I didn't want to go away to the military. She couldn't come with, right? Son of a gun. So I was like, yes, I don't have to come in. So I called my uncle and I said, hey, because he was my guardian at the time, I said, Wally, I can't get into the military. What do you mean you can't get into the military? Let me talk to somebody. So I gave the phone to the guy knowing I was in big trouble already, right? So I might as well just play this out. And he talks to the guy explained what happened, and he gets back on the phone. He said, "What the frick do you mean you've been driving my cars for the last 3 months without a driver's license?" And I said, well, yeah. He said, "Son, let me put it to you this way. You better find a job for the military because you don't have a home to come back to." So I put down the phone and I said, "Well, what else do you have, sir?" And as it turned out, I became a surgical tech in the active duty Air Force instead, which was a job I would have loved a lot more. And I still work in the operating room to this day. To this day, I still work in the operating room as what's called a perfusionist. I operate heart-lung machines for heart surgery, so for people that have heart surgery, both in adults and in children who need heart surgery. So that was the journey to get there, but I wouldn't have gotten there without the military. The other piece of the story I want to tell you is this. So, and because this is an important part, the discipline piece that it taught me. I think it kind of painted the picture that I might not have been the most disciplined person in the world as a kid. But at 18 years old, I knew everything there was to know, right? Just ask me. I would have told you that, right? And so I was always right, and the world was wrong. And so anyway, I get through basic training, 6 weeks at that time in the military. The Marines always teased us and made fun of us because theirs was, twice or 3 times as long and a lot more rigorous, right, than the Air Force basic training back in that day in the 80s anyway. And so we get to tech school, and they get off the bus, and the captain's out there to greet the new flight. He says, new flights, because there were a couple of us. "Congratulations, everybody. You are now the brothers and sisters in the military. And by the way, we only want people that want to be here. And if you don't want to be here, you don't have to be here. You come to my office, we'll get you out of here. Because I only want the people that are dedicated to the military." Ding, 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 the light went off. I went marching over to the captain's office, and I said, right after that, after we got settled, I said, "Sir, Airman Brabant reports is ordered." "Sir, I don't like the military. I don't like the way we do things. I don't like the lifestyle. I just want to go home." He said, "Just a minute." And so he steps out of the office. Now, this part of the story I hadn't heard until years later. And, apparently he got on the phone. He said, "I need this kid's file. I need to get on the phone with his parent or guardian or what have you." So he gets a hold of my uncle. All the while I'm sitting in his office waiting. And I get to the office, and he calls my uncle, explains the story. My uncle says, "Sir, I need to be very honest and transparent with you. Chris needs the military a lot more than the military needs Chris. Please don't let him out." So he gets back to the office. I snap to attention. He looks at me. He says, no, get the F out of my office." Out I go. The reason I tell you that story is not to make fun of what I was doing, but it taught me discipline. It taught me to do those things that I might necessarily not have liked in the moment, but to give it a chance. It taught me discipline and how to do well. Even at something that I didn't agree with. Back in the day, when I knew everything in the world, if I didn't want to do it, guess what? I just didn't. And all that got me was graduating at the bottom of my high school class. I graduated 6 weeks later than the rest of my class because I needed a quarter of a credit. So I played softball for 6 weeks to get through high school. Yeah, not really a glorious beginning. But anyway, the point to that is the people that I met in basic training, and I still remember that, a guy named Eric Rail. I don't know if he's with Rail Trucking or not. I see those trucks around there, but he was from Wisconsin. Great guy that we would just sit and talk for hours. Huge, at the time, absolutely huge. Basic training, the guys I met, a guy named Kenny from South Chicago. One of the best guys I ever met. Again, learned a ton from him. The folks in Phoenix, Arizona, Roger Zima, Mike Collier, all those guys I don't see anymore. The camaraderie we had, both with the men and the women there, it was amazing. It was terrific work, and it taught me that, and that's why you might ask, well, you only spent less than 2 years active duty. What did you do? Well, at the time, they had a program called Palace Chase, probably named after the 2 folks that made up that program, Palace and Mr. or man or woman Palace and man or woman Chase is what I'm trying to say. So they came from Congress, and what I could do is if I wanted to get out of the active duty military, you had to in order to fulfill your commitment, which you contractually signed, you could go into the Air National Guard or the reserves in a unit that had an opening, which is exactly what I did, and that's how I ended up at Truax Field. And that's how I ended up with those great folks. And but that's where I really learned, okay, to get to X, I need to do Y and Z. To learn that discipline. And because I, by accident, by my own actions, ended up in the operating room, I then learned what being a perfusionist or operating heart-lung machine was all about, and the discipline it took, and the years of training it took to do that. And so a couple of things I would say about the military, that's kind of my personal story about why I appreciate the military so much and what I did and what it did for me and what I tried to do. I was but a small cog in the wheel, but the things we were able to do both in the operating room in Phoenix, Arizona, and now what I'm able to do in many operating rooms, because I also work PRN and I'm licensed in a couple of different states for what I do, it's because of the military that I'm able to help others, which for me is a very awesome, very humbling experience. And so what I would say to this on a more global scale, and these are very apolitical comments, because I know politics is a hot button and I'm not even going to approach that. But if we think about our system of government, okay, as imperfect as it is, just like all of the other imperfect systems in the world, if you think about our imperfect financial system, capitalism, if you will, as imperfect as it is and with the problem, we think about our society, as imperfect as it is, I don't think anybody can argue that this is, if not the best, one of the best countries in the world to live in, as far as the freedoms that we are afforded and the things that we can do. Now we can all go into the argument about, well, there are certain people that are left behind and all of those other arguments. And if you look at every single country of the world, that's true everywhere. But I would argue what maintains our ability to do what we do, what maintains us as one of the strongest and viable economic systems in the world, as imperfect as it is, and I recognize there's tons of problems, we all do, there's also so many solutions and so many great things going on. And I would say it's because of the umbrella of freedom and the things that our U.S. military has provided, whether alone or in alliance with others, that has helped us to become the country we are, as imperfect as it is, as imperfect as the world is. And so that's more my global perspective on that. And I'll end by saying this. If we talk about, all the news and everything that we kind of have to sift through every single day. I was at a graduation ceremony last spring, and as usual in the graduation ceremonies, they played the national anthem, right? And some guy in front of me just sat down with his arms crossed, and just kind of sitting there pouting while the rest of us stood up. And to that gentleman and other folks like that, to what I would say to them is, you're welcome. Because that's the freedom that they are afforded because of the military that we have today, that we had before, and that we had way before. And so I'll wind this up by saying thank you to all of you who served, to all of you who supported those who served, and tell you that for me, it was one of the great privileges, which is why I'm here talking to you today and sharing with you. I'm certain my story is not as interesting as many others, but sharing with you what a difference and what an influence, positive influence it was on my life. And I hope it was the same for all of you, because I know for a fact that without the great experience I had, without the folks that I have met, that I was mentored by, it certainly would have been a much greater struggle than it was to be where I am today. And I know for a fact I wouldn't be. Because of those lessons, those value-add lessons learned, the teamwork, the discipline, the camaraderie, the collegiality, all so very important. And I think a lot of those guys and gals that I served with every single day, and I wasn't, and for me, I didn't serve during combat. I served, there was no combat at the time. It was right before the first Desert Storm, which was my commitment ended, and then I started my training for my medical training. So my point to that is you know, I don't know what type of camaraderie that is like. That to me is on a whole different level, because now, you know, you're supporting, or your own life is in danger, but still, to be able to be a part of that machine, if you will, to be able to be a part of that organization to support, was a huge privilege for me. So with that, I say thank you very much for your time, because I think I'm the one standing between you and lunch. But I can't tell you how much I appreciate the privilege of being here and addressing all of you, and so thank you very much.
Question.
Yes, sir.
What happened to that girlfriend?
Well, we dated for 5 years, and then she got a better offer. So thank you for asking.